everyone. Welcome back to Relax with Animal Facts. I am Steph Wolf, and today I am going to be learning with you about our furry, scaly, or possibly even slimy friends. And in today's case, it is going to be a furry friend of ours because we are covering the oh so wonderful Tamandua. Now this is a very special listener episode, as it is every week, because you guys always send your suggestions in, which is amazing. This one is dedicated to Hannah, who wrote in, I believe it was via Instagram, it might have been through email, but regardless, Hannah, thank you so much for taking the time to write into the show with a suggestion such as this one. I can't tell you how excited I am to learn about these little guys. This episode wouldn't be possible without you, Hannah, and this whole podcast wouldn't be possible without all of you wonderful listeners out there who tune in every week to keep me good company as we go into forests and deserts and swamps to learn more about our friends from all around the world. Now, if you want to learn about a friend of yours from somewhere in the world, you can write in to Relax with Animal Facts on Instagram, or you can also write an email to relaxwithanimалfacts@gmail.com. I actually was going through some old messages and I realized that I had missed a couple of you guys. And my goodness, did I feel bad. I wrote an email as soon as I saw it. Please, guys, if I miss a message, don't be afraid to send me another one. Trust me, you are not annoying me. Every time I see some new email or a new follower or a message on Instagram, I get all giddy and so excited to read what you guys have written to me. If there's anything I know about myself, it is that I can be terribly forgetful, which is not ideal when you get very cool messages from people all around the world and it just goes right past me. But anyways, please send me a message of your favorite animals that you would like to listen to and learn about on the show to keep me good company. This episode is coming out, I think, a day or two late because I had a cold. For those of you that aren't following the Instagram, if you don't have an Instagram, that's okay. But on the Instagram, I posted that I just had a cold and it made my voice sound all funny. I don't think many of you would have found it relaxing. Maybe it would be something that you would belly laugh at, but not relaxing. So I had to push it a couple of days. So here I am. It is about 9 in the evening here. I have my chamomile tea. I am ready to not go to bed just yet, but to learn about these animals first. So we're going to go into the section of the podcast where I read a review from a special listener out there. This message comes all the way from Great Britain and is written by Cowboy Hot Pot via Apple Podcasts. I love that name, Cowboy Hot Pot. Anyways, Cowboy writes, "This podcast is just perfect to take your mind off your troubles. The animal facts are really interesting, but at the same time are read in such a relaxing way, I'm usually asleep by the end. I have no idea where the idea came from to do a podcast like this, but it's brilliant. As always, you guys are so abundantly kind in your 5-star reviews. And it fills me with a lot of joy to know that you, Cowboy Hot Pot, really take a lot out of the show. It is the only reason why I record this show in the first place. In terms of where I came up with the idea to do a relaxing show about animals, I can't entirely tell you my thought process because I don't entirely remember it either. I just knew that I wanted to learn about animals and maybe some other people would like to also. I've always had a kind of voice that can make people go to sleep for better or for worse, but I just decided to take these two things, mash them together, and can you believe it? It even rhymes. Relax with animal facts. It was a match made in heaven. And here we are, just over a year. I think we're about 14 months since it came back to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all those kind of things. And it has just been an overwhelmingly great journey here with you guys. We are on almost episode 80, I think. I have to check, but wow. But enough of this. You guys always listen to me babble on for the first little bit, but now let's get sort of into the meat of it. I'm just going to say where I got my facts from, and then we can start to get into the show. I'm sure many of you are just shouting at your phones or your computers saying, Steph, come on, just keep going. So I got my facts from nationalzoo.si.edu and animals.sandiegozoo.org. I have to say that San Diego Zoo might be a zoo that I really have to visit because I get a lot of the facts for this show from them. So if you want to visit any of those resources, it's only 2 for today. I am going to leave them in the show notes because without these resources, this podcast episode would not be possible. Well, I suppose that it would still be possible. It would likely just be a lot worse. I suppose it would become a sort of mythology podcast where I would just make up what I think a Tamandua is. But anyways, now I want all of you to turn your attention to maybe where you're carrying some tension in your body. You will be surprised as to how much tension you carry in certain weird places like your head or your shoulders or neck. In my case, personally, it is usually my head. I won't even notice, where sometimes when I'm very happy or excited, the muscles on my head contract and it actually lifts my ears up. And if I was to do it over and over again, it would look like I was wiggling my ears. But you never know where you're carrying some odd kind of tension. And what I want you to do with me now is to focus on that tension and then let it go as best as you can and drop your focus from that to this immersive experience with me, Steph Wolf, as we go into the jungles where the Tamanduas reside. So the first question is, what exactly is a Tamandua? Well, if you haven't already gone on the internet to search it up, it is a type of anteater. And I made sure to search up how to say it properly. I am surprised that I have not received any formal complaints from you guys for how I say certain animal names. I know I'm Canadian and I don't say them all quite properly, but it is pronounced Tamandua, and it is often called as well a lesser anteater, because it is much smaller than its relative, the giant anteater. And I have to tell you guys that before recording this episode, while I was doing the research, I searched up what these guys look like. And one of the pictures that came up was these little guys sort of doing this weird posturing technique. And I have to say that I burst out laughing. They are so unbelievably adorable, but the way that they act sometimes is very interesting. But we'll get into that in just a second. This interesting mammal is at home both in trees and on the ground. The Tamandua is most active at night. And if you guys remember, or if this is your first time, this is known as being nocturnal, mostly active at night, as opposed to being mostly active during the day, which is referred to as diurnal. And often they're nesting during the day in hollow tree trunks. That sounds like the life. It has very small eyes and poor vision, but can hear and smell quite well. You will see that in many animals, and I'm sure that we've covered some on the podcast previously, is that while one attribute or sense will be sort of limited, there will be others in which they excel in. And in the case of the Tamandua, they don't see all that well, but they can hear and smell quite well. And tamanduas are found throughout much of South America, throughout all of Guyana, Trinidad, and Tobago. Swear name, I definitely said that incorrectly. I am going to get some angry emails about that. French Guiana, Brazil, and Paraguay. This species also inhabits parts of Uruguay, Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, and Venezuela. So they are really all over the map in this way. It seems like they love traveling. Well, of course, I don't know if they love traveling, but they certainly are in many different places. And being in these many different places will also give them an opportunity to be possibly prey to some potential predators. And those potential predators are going to be things like jaguars and smaller cats like the margay, and they would love to make a meal out of the tamandua if it weren't so stinky. The bad smell lets other wildlife know where the tamandua is and usually sends them in the opposite direction. If a predator does get too close, the tamandua may hiss and then release a very unpleasant odor similar to a skunk's, and that comes from a gland in the base of its tail. And the more I reflect on this, the more funny it becomes to me, because when you contrast it to animals that have all of these incredibly complex processes of camouflaging themselves and trying to stay hidden, or using shells and things like that to hide from predators, the tamandua says, that's a little too much work. I'm just not gonna shower for a while. And of course, if you get too close, they're gonna hiss and they can release an even more unpleasant odor. So these probably won't be the best pets. And they wouldn't make the best pets not only because they are a little stinky, but the tamandua's powerful forearms and claws can also be used for defense, or maybe against a nice couch. So probably also why it's not a good idea. If it feels threatened while in a tree, for example, the tamandua holds on to a branch with its hind feet and tail, so its arms and long claws are free to fight. Now, isn't that just fantastic? Here, I think, is a prime example of just how much beauty is in the human imagination, because I have not seen this on YouTube or anywhere else, but imagining this little anteater sort of posting itself up on a tree branch and swinging, doing some jabs, maybe a hook, a cross, maybe they are just swiping, but it is something that the imagination can just run wild with, and the Tamandua is a prime candidate for this. But let's move on, even though I can talk about that one fact probably for the rest of the show. A Tamandua's strange look works to its advantage in its Central and South American forests, as well as the scrub habitat. It has very thick, coarse fur that is a light yellow, tan, brown, or gray color, and the thick hair keeps angry ants from reaching the Tamandua's skin when it is dining at an ant hill. So these guys are armored for the job. They're going to go in there like vacuums and just start dining at that hill, munching on some ants, and their thick hair is going to act as that protective barrier. So we can see just how adapted they are to do what they do best. Many of these guys also have a very large and black band that will cover the sides of their body. It is also described as a black V going down their back. The enormous front claws will not only be used to swipe against their enemies and try to go for a knockout, but it will also help them climb. They will have 4 toes on the front foot, or on the front feet rather, with an extra long claw on the 3rd toe. And these long claws cause Tamanduas to walk on the outside edges of their front feet so that the claws don't dig into their feet. Maybe the Tamandua can get some custom-made orthotics so that it can walk normally without having to avoid their long 3rd claw. But these claws are going to play a crucial role, as we covered in the defense portion, but also when digging for food. Now, I'm going to take a quick second here to take a drink of my tea. I know that at the beginning of the podcast, it was something that was extremely common for me to stop and drink my tea. The problem is that now I get so into the show that by the time I finish recording, my tea isn't even hot anymore. It is on the lower stages of lukewarm. So I'm going to do myself a favor and take a little bit of chamomile tea. For those of you that are still awake and might be thirsty, you can drink right along with me. We know hydration is important. One day I will start my own chamomile brand so we can all drink the same tea together. But anyways, let's go forward to these very cool animals. Now, when we talked about the Tamandua sort of hanging on to the trees with their hind legs, but also their tail, we know that not all tails quite function the same. When a tail can be used as another limb to grab or hold something, this becomes known as a prehensile tail, which just means that it's able to grab things. And these guys, of course, have a very specialized mouth, as all anteaters do, as well as a special tongue, which will let them eat up to 9,000 ants in a single day. They don't have teeth to chew their food. Instead, their stomach will grind the food after it is swallowed. Now, this is something that is particularly interesting. Now, why don't we take a second to sort of compare and contrast here the Tamandua in relation to human beings and how digestion works. Now, this is not a science anatomy class, but I always like to look into some differences or similarities between us and them. And in the case of the Tamandua, we learn that the process of mechanical digestion, or sort of the grinding of this food, will happen not in their mouth, but in their stomach. We as human beings have the process of mechanically digesting our food by chewing it and then swallowing it. And in our stomach, the primary or one of the primary processes then switches to a more chemical digestion. We get stomach acid, we get all these different sorts of things going on, enzymes, but in a way we also do a mechanical digestion there as well through this sort of churning of the stomach. A 16-inch long, or that's about 41 centimeters long, sticky tongue with these little small barbs on it is just right for stealing ants and termites from their home. The Tamandua's mouth is only as round as a pencil, but it can also lick up honey and soft, juicy fruits. Isn't that just great? If I would think about the sort of size of a Tamandua's mouth, I would not have guessed it as being only as round as a pencil. I mean, most of you have access to a pencil when you want to check, hey, what is the size of a Tamandua's mouth? That is pretty small, but they do just fine. And as we read at the end, they can even get some juicy fruits and lick up some nice sweet honey as well. A powerful sense of smell helps the Tamandua find a food source, for example, like a termite mound, and the Tamandua feeds only a short time at each ant nest or termite mound, so it won't get that many bites. And if we remember, that is due to their very thick, sort of furry coat. This also helps to ensure that there are plenty of snacks at the same location the next time. So the Tamandua is really a ruthless sort of creature. They will go and take a bunch of these ants and then come back later when they have sort of repopulated once again, just to stick their long, slimy tongue into their little homes and to eat again. And now we're going to go to the final fact of the episode, which is, what does the name of the animal mean, or where does it come from? The etymology is the fancy word for that. So the origin comes from the Tupi language initially, and they use two words to describe these guys. One is tali, which is ant, and the other one is monduar, which is hunter. So of course, ant hunter. So that becomes Tamandua. And then from Portuguese, you get the Tamandua in the early 17th century. So that is quite the story. I am so glad that I chose the Tamandua to do this week. It really seemed like the right animal to do this time around. So thank you, Hannah, for the wonderful suggestion. If you would like to send some nice animal suggestions, I very much encourage you to do so. You can write into Relax with Animal Facts on Instagram or relaxwithanimalfacts@gmail.com if you prefer email, of course. So thank you to all of you who support the show in any way that you can. For some of you, that is just listening to the show, which is absolutely plenty. For some of you, it is leaving a review for the show, which is extremely helpful in bringing more of our family together from the outside world that don't know that you can relax with animal facts with others. And for those of you that financially support the show, I am abundantly grateful, and I have been reflecting on this for quite some time, and this show is just such a joy for me to do, and I will do it with financial support or not. So I have been looking at charities to support using all of the funds that come from future ad revenue on the show, from anything you guys support through Patreon, through YouTube, through PayPal, because I am really not concerned with the financial aspect when it comes to me, but there are some amazing causes out there that if you guys wanted to buy merchandise from the show and you wanted to rep some nice merchandise, you could know that you were also donating to a wonderful cause. In terms of what cause that is, it is my duty over the next week before the next episode to find one which has a lot of integrity and will do amazing things with donations. So stay tuned on that. I will be talking about it on the next week's podcast. I might talk about it a little bit earlier on the Instagram page, so it's up to you if you want to follow that. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode, because this one was quite a fun one for me personally. And I hope to see you on the next podcast episode with the next animal. Take care.